What if the moon's gravity were the same as Earth's? Imagine if the moon were so big that its gravity were as strong as on our home planet. On one hand, such a heavy moon would have positive sides. First, and most obvious, the weight of all objects on Earth would drop dramatically. Carrying heavy things would be much simpler. Builders would be happy lifting heavy beams with one hand. Logistics, construction, farming, all industries that move big masses would grow a lot. Imagine cranes lifting whole parts of buildings like Lego bricks, or farmers easily carrying bags of crops. If you jumped, you could fly up a few meters and fall with a soft thud, like in slow motion. There would be happiness everywhere. Kids would run around yelling in the streets, jumping straight to the second floor. Sports would reach a completely new level. Jumps would be amazing to watch, and running would be super fast. New sports would appear, using the low gravity for amazing tricks. The Olympic Games would become a fantastic show where human abilities seemed unlimited. Exploring space would become much cheaper and simpler. Launching rockets would need much less fuel because it would be easier to overcome Earth's gravity. Delivering goods to orbit and building space stations would be many times simpler. Space tourism would grow very fast. Maybe colonizing other planets would happen much sooner. Architecture would change a lot. It would be possible to build incredibly tall and light buildings, floating in the air like lace. Imagine stepping onto a balcony with clouds floating below you. Cities of the future could look like amazing multi-level structures connected by sky bridges. Art and entertainment would take new forms. Dances would look like amazing flights. Artists could make moving sculptures floating in the air. New rides would appear, challenging gravity and your balance. Also, it's important to note that colonizing the moon would become a reality. People could walk, run, and jump with the same ease as on Earth. Building big lunar bases would be much simpler and cheaper. There would be no need to design super light structures or find complicated ways to attach things in low gravity. Heavy equipment could be used without big problems. Getting resources from the moon would be less expensive. There would be no need to worry about mined materials flying off into space. Moving materials on the moon's surface would be much easier. Children born on the moon would grow physically the same way as on Earth. Their bones and muscles would form under normal gravity, stopping problems from long stays in low gravity. However, on the other hand, such a heavy moon would also have negative effects. One bad effect would be a disastrous change in the oceans. The moon's strong gravity would cause not just high tides, but giant, uncontrolled tsunami waves, wiping out coastal cities. Millions of people would lose their homes, and the economies of coastal areas would be destroyed. The atmosphere would also suffer a bad effect. The pull of gravity from Earth to the moon would make light gases like helium and hydrogen start to leave the atmosphere. While oxygen and nitrogen would stay, the total air pressure would drop. This would cause breathing problems at high altitudes and more exposure to space radiation. The most terrifying effect would be destructive geological activity. The moon's strong gravity would start to stretch and squeeze the Earth's crust, causing never-before-seen earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. Whole mountain ranges would fall apart, and deep cracks and craters would appear where fertile plains once were. Life on Earth's surface would become dangerous and unpredictable. The biosphere would also suffer. Many animals would not be able to get used to the unusual gravity. Large mammals would have trouble moving, and birds would get lost in flight. Plants, used to a certain gravity, would start to change shape and die. Ecosystems would break down, leading to many species disappearing. Communication and navigation satellites would stop working. Their orbits would become unstable, and many would burn up in the atmosphere. Modern civilization, which relies so much on space technology, would be sent back in time. Also, there would be negative effects for the moon itself. The lunar crust, not built for such gravity, could start to feel huge pressure. There would be a threat of earthquakes and landslides, which the moon is not ready for. The moon's thin atmosphere could hardly protect the surface from meteorites, which would now fall with much greater force, leaving deep craters and kicking up huge amounts of dust. Lunar dust, already a serious problem for astronauts because it's rough, will become even more dangerous. Every step would create thick clouds, making it hard to see and getting into the equipment. Moving across rough lunar terrain would be much harder. Climbing uphill would take a lot of effort, and going downhill would be dangerous because of the risk of falling. The load on spacesuits would greatly increase. They would need to protect against the harsh environment and also handle the increased gravity, making them heavier and harder to move in. Finally, the beautiful side of the moon as a place with unusually low gravity would be lost. The chance to easily float and make long jumps, which fascinated the first lunar explorers, would disappear. How would human civilization adapt to the unusual gravity? People would build strong underground cities, protected from earthquakes and radiation. They would learn to grow food in controlled places. They would develop other communication and navigation technologies that don't need satellites in orbit. Flying would become common, but not for fun. It would be a way to move quickly between far-off settlements, avoiding the dangerous surface. People would learn to use the gravity between Earth and the moon for their own purposes, creating special transport and machines. One thing is for sure, saying, "I love you," under such a big moon would become much more romantic.